evening, everyone, and welcome to the September 8th, 2022 Board Work Session of the Prince George's County Board of Education. Before we begin, I'd like to take this moment of silence in reverence to the passing of Queen Elizabeth of England. Thank you. Now, before we begin our meeting, I would like to ask everyone to turn off any wireless communication devices to avoid any technical interference with the microphones and taping of the meeting. A Spanish call-in line for the community to call to hear the meeting interpreted live has been established. The number is 508-924-5155. Again, the number is 508-924-5155. Board Member LaSalle Frazier, would you please recite the number in Spanish, please?
Buenas tardes. Se ha establecido una línea telefónica en español para que la comunidad pueda llamar y escuchar en vivo. El número es el 508-924-5155. Repito, 508-924-5155. Muchas gracias.
Gracias. Thank you. Closed captioning should be available through live YouTube streaming for the deaf and hard of hearing. For those who are not able to observe now, this meeting is being recorded and information will be on our board webpage. Ms. Ellis, would you now call the roll?
Good evening, everyone. Mrs. Adam Stafford.
Here.
Ms. Boozer Strother.
Here.
Mr. Cerrone Ruiz.
Here.
Dr. Harris. Mrs. LaSalle Frazier.
Here.
Mrs. Mickens Murray.
Here.
Dr. Z. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Murray.
Here.
Mr. Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Valentine.
Here.
Mrs. Williams.
Present.
Dr. Miller.
Present. Thank you. Board Member Mickens Murray, please lead us in board prayer and pledge of allegiance.
O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, steer us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. Amen. May we stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we will have the adoption of the agenda for September 8th, 2022 board work session. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
It's been moved and second to approve the agenda for September 8th, 2022. Any discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries and the agenda for Board Member Adam Stafford.
Yes, I wanted to ask colleagues if they would be willing to amend the agenda so that our public comment could be moved a little bit later in the agenda. This is the first time that I've been to a meeting where we've actually had our open session directly after the executive session, which has caused this meeting to occur about an hour 45 minutes, give or take, earlier than it normally was. And I've received emails that people were informed that the meeting would begin at 7. And so they were confirmed to be here at 7. And so these are confirmed speakers who are traveling here, and I think it would be good if we could possibly move that to lower in the agenda, maybe possibly after 4.1.
Second.
I'm sorry,
Before we
I
take
didn't
a
see, where's the
motion,
parliamentarian?
there's clarification that needs to be made in terms of notification to the public speakers, because that is an administrative process. And Mr. Newsom, the notice did go out to all people who signed up. Am I correct? Were they given the time? But no specific time? Okay. At 5:15?
For the 7 o'clock meeting?
The time of the meeting is immediately after the executive session. And when the registration came in, we contacted people who registered for 4 names. They were told to be here immediately, well, 5:15, which we figured would get them here in time for when the executive session ends.
And I would just say, I think that that is a bit unreasonable to ask people that are traveling here to come what typically would be 2 hours, or an hour and 45 minutes before the actual meeting typically would begin. And so if these are confirmed speakers, I would just ask if we could move this to after 4.1. And I also just had a clarifying question. Is our legal counsel or parliamentarian going to be here this evening?
Not for a work session.
All the confirmed speakers are present.
They're present,
Yes, there were
Thank you.
4 confirmed speakers, 1 canceled, the 3 are here.
so they're here now.
They're here seated behind me.
Thank you. Then we can move on with the agenda. Board Member Murray, did you have a comment?
Yeah, that was just going to be my question if they were here. So if they're here, then fine.
Then we can move forward with the agenda. So, that was the discussion. Is there any opposition to approval of today's agenda for the board work session? Hearing none, the agenda for September 8th, 2022 board work session is adopted. Now we will have an approval of the meeting minutes for June 23rd board meeting, August 18th board meeting. No, we won't have it. The approval for the meeting minutes for June 23rd, 2022 board meeting, August 18th board meeting, and the September 6th capital improvement public hearing will resume at our September 22nd, 2022 board meeting. Now we will move forward with public comment on the agenda, which we have 3 registered public comment speakers. To the comment speakers, you have been registered to speak in a public comment forum where the Board of Education will listen to your comments. The board will not address your comments. You must speak on the topic for which you have been registered. All registered speakers will have 3 minutes to provide comments. At the sound of the buzzer, speakers may complete that sentence only. Registered speakers may not relinquish any part of their speaking time to another registered or unregistered speaker. Speakers may not address individuals or issues with profanity or derogatory terms. You will be warned once. If you continue, your comments will be terminated. Speakers are encouraged to use titles rather than names, for example, principal, CEO, board member. Please leave a copy of your statement in the file box located next to the microphone. Your adherence to these guidelines will enable the public participation process to move smoothly. When you hear your name called, you may come forward to a microphone to begin your testimony. Again, you will have 3 minutes to present your remarks. Our first registered speaker is Sally Smith, individual, Opening School Impact on Science Center. Excuse me, Ms. Smith, is your mic on?
The other way? There we go. Good evening. My name is Sally Smith, and I'm a Prince George's County resident, but I'm also a teacher at the Howard B. Owens Science Center, which services all of your students and teachers and community in your district. I've been teaching for 29 years. I'm proud of that, and I love what I do, and I have great impact. But things are so, with the teacher crisis, the opening in schools, a little rough. And I wanted to make sure that this board knew what was happening at the Howard B. Owens Science Center and the impacts to your community. The Howard B. Owens Science Center, we advertised to your new PEEP teachers. Even before the teachers came back, those new teachers, 102, even before we were back, registered for field trips for their kids to come. Welcome to Prince George's County. They're so excited about science. They're so excited about coming to the Science Center. We have canceled every one of those trips because we needed the 7 teachers. There's only 7 teachers, but we are your factor multiplier workforce. There's 7 of us, but normally I see 1,000 kids a quarter. Right now, I'm at Buck Lodge, very nice school, wonderful principal, very welcoming. I'm in front of 112 kids. I see 1,000 a quarter. I'm seeing 112. Our staff of 7 is highly trained, highly specialized. At the Science Center, we offer your students in your community and your teachers opportunities that are not possible in the regular classroom. This sparks them for STEM careers. NASA, NOAA, Northrop Grumman, GST, SSAI, the list goes on. This county is a science county. This state is a science state. Lots of job opportunities. And we understand that you needed us, and we're there for you. But what I implore for this board, we also do PDs. Our PDs are gone for your new teachers. Our PDs are gone. Personally, in our grants, I work hard on writing grants. Part of our job is not only to service the students in your community, we do PDs for the teachers in science to help them understand the content, to give them ways to teach it. I wrote personally $30,000 in grants, $30,000 in grants to get equipment to your teachers. I have one that's under 10, an MSDE robotics grant, to get services down to the south. They can't come to us. We're coming to them, and we're writing new programs for the Science Center, but we have outreach to reach the people. Our mission is to service all of your students, all of your community. Please help us get back to the center quickly. Thank you so much. And please help Dr. Golson. It's a tough time, but thank you, and help us get back there, Dr. Golson, because our mission is to service everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Welcome, new board members. God bless.
Thank you. Coney Serrano, Casa de Maryland, Latino Student Achievement.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Connie Serrano, Research and Policy Analyst at CASA. I will begin my testimony from a CASA member, Jorge, who came to CASA seeking help to enroll his recently arrived child. At 15 years old, Mario was to enroll into his neighborhood high school in September of 2021. CASA guided Jorge through the entire process and promptly submitted the application to the International Student Admissions and Enrollment Office to ensure Mario wouldn't lose too much school time. While our staff should have been able to finish this particular request from Jorge to enroll Mario, it took 2 months of constant phone calls and personal visits to the office to fully enroll him. It was then November, and Mario had lost nearly half of the school year. This is the case of many families across the county. We see time and time again that school enrollment for recently arrived youth is incredibly difficult due to lack of language accessibility and delayed follow-up from PGCPS offices. As you know, many immigrants in this country do not have access to health care, and most of the issues that our families face when enrolling their children to schools are vaccination requirements and annual physical examinations, both which are not available to them. School socialization for recently arrived youth lacks at alarming rates in the county. In the last few years, there have been an increase in reported incidents in bullying and intimidation at High Point High School, arguably the school with the highest population of recently arrived youth. There also continues to be a disconnect between recently arrived youth and school services and resources. For example, most of these students are unaware of who their guidance counselors are and how they can help them achieve their academic goals. These are all issues that are extremely alarming. During some of the most vulnerable and pivotal times of our youth's lives, our school system should be working for them and with them. The system should be ensuring that our students succeed no matter who they are or where they come from. It is why CASA asks respectfully for the board to consider the following items: better language accessibility, multi-language enrollment info sessions made available throughout the school year for parents and students, timely follow-ups from PGCPS offices on submitted enrollment cases, providing multi-language information about vaccination sites that are accessible to students that include dates, times, and location, consider supportive programming that can help facilitate and mitigate enrollment for recently arrived youth, and lastly, honor Maryland's maximum age limit to which free education must be offered. We hope that these considerations are taken seriously and that action is taken as soon as possible. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Serrano. Dr. Gabriela Limas, Maryland Latinos Unidos, Latino students.
Muy buenas noches, good evening. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I'm Gabriela Lemus. I am the Executive Director of Maryland Latinos Unidos. Our mission is to unify efforts across the state to advocate and organize for uplifting Maryland's Latino community, regardless of their immigration status. With more than 270 members who support Latino representation, MLU's primary areas of work include research and advocacy on Latinx healthcare, educational quality, immigration, environment, economic advancement, and racial and social justice. A number of recent media stories have raised alarms that the public school system in PG County has been experiencing a number of challenges related to data, the scholastic attainment and graduation rates of its students overall, and Latinx students specifically. Maryland now sees that Latinos are close to 12% of the population statewide, and in Prince George's are now 21% of the population here, up from 17% in 2010, which translates to approximately 205,000 Latinos in the county. Latinos in PGC under the age of 18 are estimated to be 32% of the overall Hispanic population, but closer to 40% of the schools, as you well know. And in specific schools, we also know that those numbers are much, much higher. I submitted written testimony earlier, so I'll just cut to the chase in terms of the types of recommendations we would like to see. We believe that it's critical for the PGCPS to create a Latino-focused student achievement program. We can no longer settle for occasional interventions. And it's really a demographic issue because the community is growing so quickly, and the community is so young, it only promises to get larger. To get ahead of these needs, census projections suggest Latino students and their families need a targeted initiative which should embody recommendations that you've already made through your ELL work group, which was created in 2020 and I believe was accepted by this board, as well as a more intentional approach to support Latino high achievement. It is critical to assess the root causes of Latino student underperformance and failure. This is a community issue. It's for everyone to engage in. MLU recommends the appointment of an advisory body that can include experts in Latino education, community members, teachers, to assess the specific root causes and make recommendations and create specific targets for how we are all going to support together the improvement of Latino student performance and raise their graduation rates. Lastly, and I feel it cannot be overstated, and as a former academic, I feel very strongly about this, the outcomes of data and these assessments need to be made clear to the public. Data transparency and community engagement are critical to good governance of any agency or department. Without a clear baseline of information and targeted goals that include information for the public, community engagement, and buy-in, we will not succeed. This is a community problem, not just one that you yourselves hold in your hands. So we see ourselves as one of your partners and hope you will support having a laser focus, apply sufficient resources and support to ensure the educational needs of all of Prince George's children, but specifically of Latino youth. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Lemus. Dr. Lemus.
No, no, tranquila.
There are 2 written testimonies that have been posted to board docs. Current and future PGCPS parent concerns of device usage in school, and Yoselin Mejia, PGCPS parent, morning protocol during inclement weather concerns at Riverdale Elementary. With that, we will now move into 4.0, our work session discussion topics. Dr. Golson, please introduce item number 4.1 under the board work session.
Thank you. If we could post the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for allowing the executive leadership team to present our annual school opening and instructional focus presentation for the 2022-2023 school year. Just like in previous years, you'll hear from the chief and associate superintendents for our 7 divisions about what students, parents, and community members can expect for this school year. In addition, as stated in the June 23, 2022 Board of Education meeting, we will provide a complete data picture of our students' benchmark progress for the last school year. I also want us to use this time to provide clarity for any incorrect assessment information that has been previously shared. Maryland State Department of Education received waivers from the U.S. Department of Education for the 2019-2020 school year and the 2020-2021 school year. In the fall of 2021, Maryland State Department of Education administered an assessment for English Language Arts and Mathematics. This assessment served as a makeup administration from prior years due to COVID, as well as a field test for the spring 2022 administration. The results of this administration were very limited due to the fact that the results did not include the results of constructed response items for each student, as well as the fact that the assessment still had not undergone standard setting. Although the reliability and validity are questionable, due to federal compliance, Maryland State Department of Education was compelled to share those results. Individual student raw scores were available electronically to schools and parents immediately following the administration, and individual school reports were produced and forwarded and presented January 2022. The spring 2022 administration results have not been shared by Maryland State Department of Education yet. They will not be available to districts until January 2023. We received grade 5 and grade 8 science and local, state, and national government results over the summer and are preparing a data brief to be released September 18th. Additional results for the grade levels not released yet are held until after standard setting takes place, which will happen this fall and is projected to be released December 2022. To ensure we, Prince George's County Public Schools, had a better academic picture of each student, we administered our own benchmark assessment, which we will discuss in detail this evening. The Transformation 2026 Strategic Plan was drafted in early 2021. We have just completed our first operational year during the 2021-2022 school year. This slide illustrates the alignment between the 4 identified outcome goals for our strategic plan and those aligned and defined by the Maryland State Department of Education's Maryland Blueprint areas. In the chart, we've also included our focus areas for the 2022-2023 school year. And in those 3 areas, we have also identified the 2023 strategic theme. One of the top priorities of this year is our focus on accelerating achievement in mathematics. And during our summer mathematics-focused Summer Improvement Institute with the University of Maryland, school-based and district teams we stress the importance of having strong mathematics goals as part of their school performance plans this school year. Our monitoring structures will provide ongoing feedback to instructional staff and increased professional development opportunities to build capacity across the school system. In addition, the center of our efforts is around becoming a learning organization. Therefore, enhanced system-wide professional development for all employees is paramount to our success. Professional development will be aligned to each focus area and designed to address specific areas for growth of our staff. And then lastly, the icons at the bottom of the slide identify a timeline of key activities related to our plan implementation for the fall. The annual progress report will provide a snapshot of our progress towards meeting the critical success indicators aligned to the 4 outcome goals. The Maryland State Department of Education continues to require that local education agencies develop a reopening plan. Prince George's County Public Schools reopening plan was finalized in early August and submitted to Maryland State Department of Education for review and approval on Friday, August 12th. We are still waiting feedback from Maryland State Department of Education, which has indicated that it would take at least 1 month after submission to receive feedback. Our reopening plan includes updates on health and safety, transportation, instruction, supports, mental health services and supports, just to name a few sections. You will hear about some of the updates included in the reopening plan in this evening's presentation. The entire reopening plan is in English, French, and Spanish. You can find it at the link provided on the PowerPoint slide at the very bottom of this presentation, and you can also find it on the main webpage. Now I will turn the presentation over to Dr. Mark Fawcett, our Chief Operating Officer, who will share updates on how our facilities were prepared for the opening of schools.
Thank you, Dr. Golson, and good evening, members of the Board of Education. The Department of Building Services worked tirelessly this short summer to prepare all of our facilities for the opening of schools. The Building Services team will continue to provide bottled water to all schools. However, we will begin phasing in the use of water fountains for their normal use as quickly as possible. This is in support of the recently passed Climate Action Committee plan, and we want to ensure that we are reducing our bottled water consumption in support of limiting the amount of plastic bottles used and discarded into the environment. We will continue to use MERV 13 filtration where possible. As you all know, we moved to MERV 13 filters last year, and we will continue to do that in the future. We will continue to daily disinfect over 19 million square feet of school space daily. Last year, we entered 3,000 air purifiers into our system for our classrooms and over 300 for our temporary buildings. We will continue to use and support those purifiers in classrooms as needed. We will also continue to use our state-of-the-art disinfecting equipment, which includes over 400 electrostatic machines, which are dispersed through every school in the school system, and our 50 Adabot ultraviolet robots that we deploy when needed. In our transportation department, the Stop Finder app will continue to be used for our mobile devices to track buses in real time and notify families of late arrivals. This app will go fully live on September 12th. An exemption to our real-time tracking is when we double routes. This occurs, as you know, more readily now with the shortage of bus drivers. The system can only track one bus, so if there are 2 routes on the bus, the app may not work for the other route. Our online transportation resolution system is there for parents and guardians to communicate their questions and their concerns regarding transportation. Security updates. In June of 2022, Prince George's County Public Schools hired a new director and operations supervisor of safety and security services. Beginning July 1st, we also reinstated the Safety and Security Council supervisor position at the school level while maintaining compliance with the County Executive's police reform task to reduce arrests in schools. This school year, we also added 10 additional safety and security assistant positions. And in addition, we also hired a safety and security compliance officer who will help us track incidents and also make sure that our security personnel receive the necessary required training and certifications. At this point, I will turn the program over to Dr. Christy Baldwin, our Chief of Human Resources.
Thank you, Dr. Fawcett. Good evening, board members. It's good to be in front of you again from our last work session in May. In May, we discussed our recruitment efforts and the human capital of Prince George's County Public Schools. During the teacher hiring season for this new school year, we actually attended 80 events just for teacher recruitment alone. This summer, we had 12 events for transportation and bus driver hiring and 5 events that were solely focused just on hiring nurses. As shared with you previously, we increased our recruitment and marketing efforts to recruit and attract teachers using non-traditional approaches such as our hiring mixers, a hiring palooza, and we invested and used Career Fair Plus virtual platform, which on August 31st was actually recognized by the Biden administration as one of the top platforms to recruit teachers, which we were already using. We combined these efforts with securing major news media interviews, coverage, radio advertisements in both English and Spanish, and invested in more paid social media advertisements such as Handshake and LinkedIn. And we also used this season to take the suggestions from the work sessions to go have our recruitment booths at local community events. So thank you for that suggestion. It worked out well for us. Next slide. Based on the fill rate conversation we had at May in our work session, the data, on this slide shows our fill rates for this year's hiring season. You will see that despite reports and the national crisis in the supply and demand for teachers, bus drivers, and nurses, our numbers are relatively high for the number of positions we were able to fill. However, it is the unfilled positions that continue to plague us and have our attention. We will continue our efforts to hire bus drivers, custodians, and nurses throughout the year. As of September 12th, we have 78 individuals scheduled for our CDL prep class, and then we have 24 individuals that are scheduled for our CDL bus driver class. For our teachers, our next big push for recruitment and hiring is to target our December graduates. While our recruitment team continues those efforts, next slide, we have worked with our colleagues in the divisions of academics and school support and leadership to implement the following strategies to cover vacant positions, which are aligned to strategies that our counterparts throughout the District, Maryland, and Virginia area are using, which includes offering different teaching models, combining classes where feasible, offering long-term substitute positions early on, and redeploying our central office teacher to vacant positions until they're filled. Last week, Human Resources began the process to redeploy over 150 teachers from central office into teacher record vacancies at our schools that have the highest number of vacancies. Given the crisis in teaching, we must also now shift our focus to things that we can do internally to grow individuals into the profession. We will be shifting our priorities to our Grow Your Own programs and investing in those partnerships that we will capitalize that we already maintain with our different university partners to build our workforce. In addition, we are partnering with communication to look at ways to sell the PGCPS brand in a positive image rather than the negative narrative that appears to consistently plague our efforts when it's time to recruit individuals. So we look forward to everyone joining us in our campaign to brand this awesome school district with a positive narrative, and we look forward to hopefully the passing of our PGCEA contract, which actually has unprecedented salary increases as well as more planning time for our teachers. And that's the narrative we are hoping that we all walk away with, selling Prince George's County Public Schools as the brand of choice. And now I turn it over to my esteemed colleague, the Chief of Academics, Dr. Douglas Strader.
I don't wish to take Dr. White's role. That's Chief of Accountability.
Oh,
just to
I'm
be
sorry.
clear,
I was
put it
on a
out
roll.
there. But thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Miller, Vice Chair Williams, members of the board, thank you for your time this evening. Share some highlights from the Division of Accountability. First, I wish to introduce the leadership team from Accountability, place names with faces. It's great to be back here in person once again. Mr. Anthony Whittington, Director of Office of Monitoring Accountability. Stand, please. Ms. Jamie Bowers, Director of Office of Testing, Research, and Evaluation. Ms. Natasha Flood, Director of S and Title I Office. Last but not least, Ms. Vanessa Weatherington, Director of the Office of Strategic Planning and Resource Management. There is one additional office within the Division of Accountability, that's Pupil Accounting and School Boundaries. That position is currently vacant, and we're actively filling it. So thank you for your attendance. It's always great to place the name with the face. So moving forward, focusing first within our Monitoring Accountability Office, Dr. Golson's already shared the information related to the implementation of our T26 strategic plan. I now wish to focus on two aspects within the Monitoring Accountability Office. First, foremost at the top here, Monitoring Accountability has gone through extensive efforts in working with our schools through their school performance planning efforts. They've developed a platform that leverages improvement science as their mode for continuous improvement, and they're working through with schools to refine that process, make it as efficient as possible. So they have introduced this new school performance plan and a more adaptive environment for our schools to help them and assist them to get through this continuous improvement efforts. It is critical in that this is the vehicle that our schools use, and this allows us to assist them and measure their progress in meeting their goals. Second, in a prior board meeting last year, we shared the cohort tracker with you all. It was a new platform that we're using to assist our schools in monitoring our students as they're progressing through high school. We shared that with you last year as our ability to predict where our kids are, look at the issues that they have, and what their needs are for graduation. We shared phase 1 with you last year, promised this year we would have phase 2, and that is now coming to fruition. So this is going to be a one-stop shop for a counselor, any school-based person, to be able to look at a high school student and see exactly where they are as progressing towards meeting their graduation requirements. It includes everything from their courses, grades, information, everything, even including their community service hours. So it is a wonderful tool. It has stoplight colors in there, works very well. Transitioning now to our Title I office. To get an idea of where their efforts are heading this year, you can look at where we're spending our money in Title I, and some of the key areas are identified here. Following along with our focus on mathematics, there's emphasis on at-home math tools, the math toolbox, as well as they're spending their monies to assist our schools with their technologies. We're also looking at supporting high school promoters. These folks have similar roles as like social workers, working with our McKinney-Vento kids, supporting them in everything, including applying for colleges, whatever they need. So it's an excellent added support for these families and students. We're also supporting parent English classes, very key for our district, as well as continuing with our summer STEM camp programs to assist our students. Switching gears now, looking at our assessment program and our Department of Testing, Research, and Evaluation. Focusing on the assessment side of the aisle within the Department of Testing, Research, and Evaluation, within this slide you can see a couple of the key pieces here. The office this year has a couple highlights here. First of which, moving forward with planning theme-based data sessions with schools that are linked to the school performance plans, in particular the goals related to mathematics. The office is being very focused on that math data and supporting schools in their instructional programs. They're also new for this year, participating in data participation days, in which schools will include students in looking at their data and talking about how to best support their own learning. Interesting new twist. Also new this year, the parent portal. Through the Department of Testing, Research, and Evaluation and the Pearson platform, parents will be able to log on and look at the vast array of assessment data that we have for all of their students, for all the assessments that their students are participating in. We're also included in providing pertinent information regarding the state assessment program. New on the horizon is the state's new end-of-course assessments that our students will need to meet, satisfy their graduation requirements. And last but not least, wish to reference the school testing calendar. The office has gone through lengths with both internal and external stakeholders to continue to refine our assessment calendar. This year, we're recognizing a savings of approximately 480 minutes of instructional time from last year. And much of this is, again, a review of all of our assessments to choose which assessments are best suited for which needs and which students need to take those. As an example, decisions were made for our iReady assessments. Formerly, we required 3 census administrations per year for our students in this program. We've been able to determine through the data to instead offer one census administration of this and have the other two administrations available for targeted students only to meet their needs. So decisions such as that, as well as eliminating a couple of our assessments, has got us to this point of savings. So this is always an annual effort that we undertake to, again, maximize our assessment program. Okay, next, okay. So much of what we do to prepare for an upcoming year is dependent upon our assessment data. So the purpose of the PGCPS assessment program is to measure the students' learning, to support our teachers and other stakeholders in making their decisions, and to identify additional needs and resources for both enrichment and defining the student's instructional program. Past couple of years have been particularly challenging due to the pandemic, as well as the newness and transitioning of both the local as well as the state's assessment program. Transition next. Dr. Goldson shared earlier how the state is transitioning the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment Program assessment. So the most recent administration, again, for accountability purposes of the MCAP assessment was for school year 19. That was the last reported year. If you go out to their website, you will see that data there. Since then, they've been in a mode of transition, and then unfortunately the pandemic hit in the middle of this. So they are working towards updating this assessment. As Dr. Goldson mentioned, they are going through a standard setting process this fall for the most recent administration, which was the spring of 2022. We're going to need to wait until January of this year, 2023, to see the results from last spring. So again, that's due to the state having to go through that standard setting process. This also has an impact on our local assessment program. We are waiting for the state to define what the new proficiency standard is going to be on the state assessment program so we can overlay that on our own benchmark assessment program here within the district. I'll bring more information to that here shortly. So within our district assessment program, to highlight some of the key features of this, I've included the assessments here so you can take a deeper dive. We all know that one assessment is not able to tell the entire story of a student. Thus, the key areas of need to inform instruction have been identified along with the best aligned assessments in order to have the most efficient assessment program while maximizing instructional time. Included here are the most common assessments. These assessments are intended to support the state's MCAP assessment program. So between our formative district assessment program coupled with the summative state program, it paints a clear image of what our students need and where we are as a district. Thank you. So the benchmark assessments. These are, I would say, the cornerstone of our assessment program. The benchmark is one of the most comprehensive assessments, mostly aligned to the standards within our program. To give you a little bit of a descriptor of what these are, how they work, there's 2 required administrations at the end of the first quarter and at the end of the second quarter. There is a third benchmark that is optional for our schools. This past year, roughly less than 50% of our, right around 50% of our schools actually participated in that administration. It's completely up to the schools and their goals. They use them for different purposes, for different student populations and so forth. I'll get to that data here momentarily. The benchmarks assess the progress towards understanding the standards during a particular point in time. You cannot use the benchmark assessments from benchmark 1 to benchmark 2 to assess growth. It's important to understand that. Each benchmark includes those standards. It assesses those standards from that instructional block of time. So the students take benchmark 1, get a score, benchmark 2. You should not expect to see an increase in score from benchmark to benchmark. They're 2 completely different sets of standards that are being assessed during those windows. So just a point of clarification. The assessments themselves are intended to be administered in 1 or 2 instructional blocks of time. That's actually periods of instruction, so they have little interruption on the actual school day itself. So the English teacher is supposed to have that assessment during that particular block in time. It's not a school events-based type of assessment. And the assessments are expected to be formative in nature. The items themselves are designed to assess the outer limits of that particular instructional window. We don't have items assessing the entire continuum. Instead, it's really about did the students meet the targets. Okay, that's key when you're interpreting the data. So again, you're not looking at where students are in a continuum. you're really seeing did the students meet the finish line, and getting some descriptive information on that status. So the key instructional features for our teachers, again, this assessment is formative in nature. It's all about supporting the teachers. They're listed and identified here. Let's transition to the next. So what exactly are these results? Because there has been some misunderstandings out there. So again, Dr. Goldson shared earlier that the state program is in the midst of transition. I shared earlier the state is still in the process of defining what proficiency is. Hopefully, the state is going to be able to continue their trends of which they've defined proficiency. They've aligned it with college readiness. Perhaps that's going to continue. I'm hoping it somewhat continues, but that sets a very high bar for our students. But the process and standard setting, they define what the standard is, they move forward with that standard, they overlay that standard on each assessment or each grade, and they define what that proficiency cut is. In the absence of that, all we have are raw scores. So what we've done with this particular assessment, we've defined a percentage, a raw cut score at the bottom of the scale and at the top of the scale to create 3 distinct groups of students. We've taken those percentages and we've overlaid those across all contents, all grade levels. So it's the same percentage across all, for the simple reason of grouping students for reporting purposes and to help teachers and so forth group students by 3 bands of performance. It is important to discuss this because, go ahead and transition to the next slide. This is what the data actually looks like. So again, it's the same percentages that's used to define the red bar, the yellow bar, and the green bar here, the same percentages despite the content and or the grade level. There's no consideration for what proficiency would be defined in each of those individual tests. We haven't taken that step yet. We're waiting for the state to define what proficiency is. Then we'll overlay that proficiency scale and create scales for our students on each test by each content. So what you see here up on the screen is our ELA and math performance for benchmark 1 and 2 from last year, and the data is displayed in a very similar way that the state, during the state board meeting, talked about their fall 2021 results. It's just based on raw scores. So you have to be careful with the inferences that are associated with associating those green bars with proficiency. The green bars up there, looking particularly at the math from benchmark 2, that low percentage of 4%, that doesn't mean that only 4% of our kids are proficient in mathematics. That is not what that means, okay? That's just talking specifically for this assessment. That's how it's clustered. 4% of our kids scored over whatever the high cut score was for this particular assessment. So we have to be careful when we talk about 4% of our kids are on grade level or 4% of our kids are proficient, because again, we haven't taken that additional step of defining what that actually means. Okay? So just trying to support. So what have we seen within our benchmark program? First, noteworthy growth. So can we use our benchmarks to assess growth? Yes, we can. Not by comparing a student's performance from benchmark 1 and 2, no. How you measure growth is we compare the student's performance on benchmark 1 last year compared to how they performed on benchmark 1 this year. We can look at that growth over time for that student on those various assessments. That's how we're doing it. So when you look at this, I've included some percentages here you can see. What I can share is we have seen growth across all of our assessments and contents from last year to this year within our students. And those percentages are included here for your review. So that is a good news. So to summarize, for both the benchmark reporting as well as the fall MCAP reporting, proficiency has not yet been defined. I continue to emphasize that because it is a limitation of the reporting of the data. The benchmarks in particular are used for instructional purposes and not necessarily for summative labeling of students. So again, I have to be careful. So what is it that we can use? What is one of the most common measures that we can use to look at our students' performance, their proficiency? Here's the next slide. That would be the students' grades. So in the past, grades have issues. There's questions about grades on the reliability and validity within grades. We know that. But on the other hand, it is one of the best means of looking at student performance during the pandemic time, most of our universities went away from using standardized assessment to using grades for admission purposes. And so it is a way of looking, especially when you're looking collectively across a district this size, it can be a very reliable way of looking at our student performance. In a past board meeting, I did share with you the impact of the pandemic on student grades. That presentation is available to you. The document is actually posted out there on our pgcps.org website. I am pleased to share with you that our grades have increased since the pandemic. So again, a new positive note that you can see that we are now trending in the right direction as we're coming or moving away from the pandemic itself. So the combination of the use of grades along with our assessment data, again, share multiple measured approach of trying to understand and define both the needed resources for our kids and those that are needed for enrichment. So with that said, I would like to now hand it over to my most esteemed colleague, Dr. Judy White.
Good evening, board members. It's a pleasure seeing you this evening. When you arrived this evening at your station, you had a Realizing Transformation document. So some of the things I'm going to speak to you about this evening are in that document. There are more things in that document, so you can actually look at it when it's convenient for you. That document was created along with the Division of Academics, the Divisions of School Support and Leadership, and the Division of IT. So on this first slide, you see we talk about Goal 1. We always try to bring it back to our strategic plan, and Goal 1 is educational excellence. So our literacy plan, which we created, we're now in our second iteration, therefore it's Literacy Plan 2.0. And this is our second year really delving deep into that literacy plan, which really speaks to reading, writing, speaking, listening, critical thinking, reasoning, and digital literacy. So in the pandemic, we learned from it, and now we have added digital literacy skills. So how are our students researching? How are they using their device responsibly? How are we allowing them to integrate tools into their classroom and making it a part of the 21st century use for them? Next, you see tutoring and enrichment. And like before, we have many opportunities for our students again this year through tutoring and enrichment, as well as acceleration. And those opportunities will be not only during the day, but after school and on the weekends. And some of the interventions, just so that you know, Math Shelf, Read 180, Hatch, Carnegie Learning, Do the Math, Dreambox, Close Up, iReady, Voyager, Achieve 3000, Book Nook, and Tutor Me. While I'm at Tutor Me, I just really want to stop and make a plug, and this is one way that you all can really help us, is that Tutor Me is a 24/7 tutoring program for our students, and it comes in many languages. So we even have students that are in our immersion programs. Our students have access, so not only to our teachers, but there are teachers that they can get on with live and work through homework, work through questions, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So any plugs that you can give for that with your districts would be awesome. If you need more assistance with that, you can definitely reach out to my office, but we also have information about that on our website. In terms of culture responsive practices, we know it aligns very well with our social and emotional learning and programs that are in our schools. We worked extremely hard to go back into all of our curriculums and really spend time looking at what we're putting in there so that every student walks in our doors in feeling their authentic self. How do they walk in the door and feel accepted? How can the classroom have rich dialogue and conversation? And how can they see themselves in the lessons that are there? This is not a one-year initiative. This is something that we will spend time doing. Our staff, before we could really even roll this out, had to spend the last 2 years going through culture responsive training ourselves so that we could make sure that the biases and other things that show up in our curriculum that can impact our students are addressed. So we're excited about the work that we've done with that. This year, like last year, we started a pilot with our Canvas learning management system, but this year we are robust. Our entire district has moved to Canvas. Our textbooks are now in Canvas. Our students are in. And just in case you're hearing from our wonderful parents or our staff members, we have even tiered our support. So you may be a teacher this year that is in Canvas, and all you're doing is grabbing your curriculum and you are teaching the way you know how to teach. Or you could go all the way up to tier 3 and be an advanced teacher where you're pushing out your assignments, you're collecting your assignments. Your students are doing videos in Canvas. Your students are providing their work back to you in Canvas. So know that we are not trapping every teacher into an extensive model, we have layered that because we identify that we are trying to train 11,000 adults as well as our students. So if you hear from any of our students, we are working also with them. Students are resilient. They learn. They pick it up. And likewise, our surrounding districts, our surrounding universities, all in the state of Maryland, are all moving to Canvas. And so we are also preparing them when they leave our doors that they will be ready to attack the world. Next slide. My favorite slide, you all know, I always talk about the academic journey. And the reason that this is important is because it lays the foundation for what we want to see with our students. So when we look at our students, we think about them leaving our districts, being critical thinkers, communicators, goal-directed learners, creators and innovators, and global citizens. But the only way that we can create that for them, and we call them our why. They are why we do this every single day. The only way we can do that is through an instructional framework, which we call our how. We know that that comes through building culture and community in every single school, in every single classroom for our students. It comes through the curriculum planning and implementation that takes place by way of our collaborative planning opportunities, the discussions that take place in our classrooms, the professional development we provide to make sure that our teachers understand the curriculum and the standards as they plan. It comes through the learning experiences that they receive in their classrooms every day, whether it be through STEM, through mathematics, through reading language arts, whether it's the arts, whether it's career and technical education. It should be problem-based, it should be task-centered, and it should ensure that students are learning, but learning in a fun way and in a way that they can approach real-life scenarios. And then assessment and reflection, and my colleague talked a lot about data and how we have to use that data to inform instruction. So our purpose with that data should be when students perform, and we know that we've taught, how do we come back and have those collaborative conversations that allow us to go back to the classroom and reteach? Now, what makes that difficult sometimes is that our curriculum continues to move. And so that's why professional development is key, because we have to work with our teachers on how do you find a way to scaffold back? How do you give exit tickets? How do you create warm-ups in a different way so that you're steady attacking skills that students have already worked on, but you're steady accelerating them at the same time? Research has talked a lot about we can't drill and kill our students. We have to move students in a rigorous way through acceleration, and that means real live time when they don't understand, you work right there. It does not mean you're in 5th grade and I'm going to take you back to 2nd grade to fill a gap. It means that I'm going to give you the standard at the rigor of the standard for the grade in which you sit, and I'm going to accommodate and modify it while you're there, and I'm going to pull you in small groups and continue to build your level every single day in that classroom. So that's the academic journey. I know you're all going to be talking to your constituents about the academic journey. So mathematics, you have heard our CEO indicate, as well as our data, that math is a priority for us. We don't shy away from that. As a matter of fact, we are attacking that this year head on. And while these areas that you see on the screen, you would naturally think that they should take place every day, and you're actually absolutely right. They should take place within the course of the year. But one of the things that we have committed to doing this year is having a pulse on it, talking about it, and monitoring it. So over the last 3 years, while we know that we wanted to monitor, we've been in classrooms, we've done a really good job handling a pandemic. And now it's time that all of our students are back in and that we can really focus on the area of mathematics. That does not mean we are not focused on any other content, but it does mean that we're going to have deliberate conversations about what takes place in mathematics. This summer, starting at our Summer Leadership Institute with our administrators, we begin having that conversation and reviewing our systemic math focus. So when our teachers first came back, it should have been about looking at school culture and culture in the classroom and student efficacy. What do we believe about what our students can achieve? What are the conversations that we have with them every single day? What's the culture of our building around mathematics, not just for our teachers of mathematics, but for every teacher in our schools? When schools operate from a school performance plan, they have to choose goals that they're going to focus on for the year. Every single school will have a math goal based on the mathematics data in there that represents their school. When we talk about our school performance plan, we come back to that. We look at it every single quarter. We look at their data. They look at the action steps and the strategies they've put in place. And we know that we'll come back and address how they're doing and how to continue to make gains. Data-informed instruction. We've set aside days in our curriculum and all of our mathematics curriculums where there is time for teachers to meet with students based on data. Our teachers are trained on what they see in their data and how to go back and reassess students and how to go back and reteach. You may hear some schools talk about Wow Wednesdays, especially in our elementaries. That's their time to do that. We know that in our secondary schools, it looks a little different because they're on 8A, B-Day schedules, but explicitly for mathematics, we have built time into the curriculum to stop, pause, and reassess. Collaborative planning. We have put a pulse on collaborative planning in terms of mathematics. What's the conversation? We should see our mathematics documents. We should see our teachers planning together. We should see them going out into our classrooms, delivering lessons, coming back, talking about the student work, and then talking about what they should do as a result of what their students were able to give back. Formal observation data. We're going to really look at what does the observation data say about what our teachers are doing? What is the feedback that's been provided to our teachers? And how are we using that feedback to determine the professional development needs for each teacher in their schools? We're going to use the informal math observation, our principals and our building leaders, not just our principals, because it takes more than a principal to have success in a school. We'll be going into our classrooms doing informal mathematics observations. So we've worked with them on looking at the curriculum. We've worked with them on what they should see when they go out, so that we're all looking at the same thing. We're looking at pacing. We're looking at the learning experiences to determine how our teachers are moving through our curriculums. Quarterly learning walks. The area office, the team academics will have opportunities to partner with our schools, as well as even our Title I offices and every office that supports schools, on how we can go out together and collectively look at the work and how we can all partner to help them in their journey, because it does not rest on schools alone. And then you've heard me mention math professional development. We will continue to provide math professional development for our teachers at a variety of times to help build their content knowledge. And we will also hold office hours throughout the year so that our teachers can drop in as they need assistance looking at the rigor of the standard. Next slide. So we know that kindergarten readiness, and this falls under our excellence in equity. We know that our kindergarten readiness, we have to begin to look at. Our students, many of them did not come to last year. Many students stayed home. So now we have students who have never been in pre-K, and they are here for the first time. So we know that as we prepare our pre-kindergarten students, and I'm happy to announce that all of our pre-K classrooms are full day starting this year, which makes a difference. So this is the year that we need to see what we're doing in our pre-kindergarten classrooms, so that when we take our KRA next school year, we will be able to look at how our students who were in our pre-K full-day programs will compare and do against students who are showing up in kindergarten for the very first time without a Prince George's County Public School pre-K experience. So we know that our KRA data might not look like that this year, because remember, a lot of our students were not here in pre-K when you look at our numbers. So we're excited about, though, what does that mean for what we built for our curriculum this year? What does the disciplinary opportunities look like for our students this year that are in pre-K? Because this will drive what we do moving forward. Like last year, our summer learning opportunities were rich. We had 52 programs located in 73 locations, and those programs either offered acceleration, enrichment, intervention, and most importantly, credit recovery. We are excited that many of our students, our seniors, were able to graduate not only in the spring, but through our summer graduation program. Our summer program will take place again next summer, and we are excited about those opportunities for our students. When you think about digital tools, I talked about Canvas Learning Management System, but in all of our curriculums, we have provided an opportunity to integrate digital tools. So you might hear a lot about the device, one-on-one devices, and screen time. Know that we identify our computers as just another tool. So our students should have many tools. Paper and pen is always a great tool, and they should be using them. We should be reading books. There should be tangible books in a classroom. There should be learning experiences where students are in class talking to one another. They have opportunities where they will be on their device, but it is not our expectation that a student is on a device from the moment they walk into a classroom to the moment they leave. They should have direct instruction every single day. But we have taken the time to do build-in opportunities for digital tools, and we have begun talking to our teachers about the balance of screen and instructional time. And then you see student and staff surveys, and we are extremely excited about this opportunity. We've always asked our teachers to give us feedback on our curriculum. How can we make it better? Because they are the end user. I'm actually excited that my staff is back out in schools, and I've tried to do this for the last 2 years. But this will be a rich opportunity for us to see. Again, I always say, we think we write amazing curriculum. But what does it feel like when it hits the classroom? And so I think this will be an awesome opportunity for us to find out how do we get better, because our own staff that's out will be able to come back and say, we do that doesn't work, and let's talk about why so we can make changes. But what's exciting about this is the student survey. We want to hear our student voice. We want to hear what students think about their courses. We want to know ways that we can get better as we engage our students. So our last goal 3, workforce and operational excellence. I've talked today about our professional learning opportunities, how they will continue. Know through the pandemic, you will always hear me say that I will continue to make sure that my staff is trained, because in order to train, you must be a trainer of trainer. You need to learn yourself so that you can keep imparting your knowledge on others, and that's an obligation I have for them to continually learn so that they can help our teachers. We will continue to move forward with our ESOL strategic plan and our special education strategic plan. So it was amazing to hear the speakers this evening, because our strategic plan for ESOL addresses just that. We're looking at how we improve academic achievement, we increase staff capacity, our family and community engagement, and how we work in the absence of our vacancies. And so we will spend time continuing to do that. Know that we don't just write a plan. At the end of the year, we look at ourselves against our plan and we rate ourselves. That data will be going to Dr. Golson, and she will have that against our ESOL plan and our strategic plan. And the last one I will say is we cannot forget our community. And so we have learner tips on our website that will support our students, our parents, and our community partners, because our community partners have our students in many activities. So we want to always provide them also with what are the high leverage areas that you could do in your programs that will support and undergird the literacy plan that we have in place for our district. I now turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Helen Coley, Chief of School Support and Leadership.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. White. Appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to begin by commending our schools. Our principals have led the work of opening schools for the last 9 days and have done so successfully. Our principals and their staff respectfully. I'd like to begin by sharing and referencing something that has already been communicated. During July, when principals were engaged in our SLI, our Summer Leadership Institute, that was the time by which they received the charge from our CEO in terms of what the deliverables should be during the course of this school year. In doing so, they were afforded an opportunity during the summer months to begin the planning stages while at the conference. During that time of planning at the conference, they prepared for pre-service week for our leaders, our teacher leaders, and our students. They began to ensure the provision of instructional learning environments that would be conducive to learning experiences for all of our students. As referenced by my colleague, Dr. Strader, data is the foundation for the delivery of instructional practices within each classroom. Data ultimately informs instruction. During the course of this year, we will continue, as referenced on slide 25, to engage in instructional practices, to monitor the instructional implementation of the curriculum as shared by colleague Dr. White. Excitedly, we've returned to full-time sports. Full-time sports, the fall season actually began on August the 10th. The other dates, September the 2nd, that was our first play date. The winter and spring sports began, or will begin, on November the 15th, 2022, and March 1st, 2023, respectively. Student field trips. We're back to being able to engage and have and participate in our student field trips. We are asking that all parent volunteers, which we welcome at all times, to ensure the provision of having a COVID negative test prior to. 48 to 72 hours in advance of the trip. Where and if there are any changes to what has been identified in the administrative procedure, we will do so in writing. During this school year, we are excited that we have 96 community schools. With the 96 community schools that we have this year, it is an increase of 47 schools from our previous year. We began in 2019, 20 with a very small number. I think it was about 20 our first year. Now we have 96 community schools in Prince George's County. Excitedly, we have launched non-traditional school programs. Non-traditional middle school program, formerly Green Valley Academy, non-traditional North and South programs as well. The North program was formerly Tall Oaks and Annapolis Road, and the South program was formerly Croom and CBC. Excitedly, we have over 100 students currently participating in our non-traditional North and South programs. We do not have as many students in our middle school program just yet, keeping in mind that for the last years with the middle school programs, it has been 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, with more of our students concentrated in grades 9th and 10th. This year, with our middle school program, it is grades 6th, 7th, and 8th. However, on yesterday, we did begin our registration process for any new students to participate in these non-traditional programs. Next slide, please. Bullying updates. Excitedly, with our first one being last Wednesday, we now have quarterly Wellness Wednesday. They are parent sessions. And the parent sessions themselves focus on bullying prevention, mental health practices, and restorative approaches. Our first one, the dates, the sessions for this school year are as follows. August 31st, which did occur. We had a guest speaker who was simply phenomenal. Much feedback from our parents that are telling us how great that session was and how and what areas they would like for us to continue with as we move forward. So the data that was provided by our parents will guide the November the 9th session as well as the February the 1st and May 3rd. At the conclusion of each meeting, we will ask parents for their input so that we are informing and providing for them sessions that are specific to what they have identified as their areas of need. We do have a bullying reporting app that we are utilizing that was referenced on during the call. That bullying app, reporting app, is on each school's web page. And I'm really excited about the provision of posters that will be provided to all of our schools so that all of our students can begin using the QR code, as you see here on the slide. And with that QR code, they're able to actually report incidents of bullying as it may have occurred. Second step is going to be utilized as well for grade students in grades 6 through 8, and it also addresses the social emotional learning component for our students as well. As we all are aware, it is certainly critical for that to occur in all of our schools, at all of our levels, but specifically as at the middle school level, where it's often referred to as being stuck in the middle. Bullying Advisory Council, the Associate Superintendent, Dr. Faison, will lead a Bullying Advisory Council. As you can see here, that council will be comprised of students, parents, and cross-disciplinary team members from Prince George's County Public Schools. We are very excited about that and looking forward to the provision of this advisory council. Bullying data clinics began during the summer months. Why bullying data clinics? We wanted to ensure that all of our leaders were utilizing the information and inputting the data accurately in the template that is being provided. So during that provision, Dr. Faison and members of her team provided support to our school leaders, and school leaders in many instances brought their school teams with them respectively. Communication, providing memorandum to all principals for updates to the administrative procedure, as well as reporting measures, interventions, and letters to parents on the same will be issued this year, meaning that we are communicating as well with our principals ongoing what the expectations are in terms of them adhering to practices, structures, and systems as it relates to our bullying efforts. Continued efforts, October is definitely Bullying Prevention Awareness Month. Schools will be provided additional information specific to what they should be doing respectively. It will be a plan in place at every school. It will be recognized in every school, and the provision of bullying months will be the standard. Health updates. COVID-19 rapid antigen testing will be available for students that are experiencing symptomatic cases. Individuals who in fact test positive will be home for 5 days, returning on day 6 as long as they are asymptomatic. Masks are expected to be worn upon their return on days 6 through 10. New to us this year, in partnership with our county health department, is a referred component called Hazel. Hazel Health, very new to me, but throughout the experiences and professional learning that I've received personally, it is a telehealth component that will be available for our students in schools, actually in 60 schools. 60 schools during the course of the day. The health room, within the health room, there will also be a location that is specific to a student coming down if they're experiencing headaches, if they're sick, if they want to have that telehealth component to speak directly to a physician, that will be available in 60 schools. High schools, K through 8s, and middle schools. Now, that is during the course of the day. During the evening hours, parents may also utilize telehealth while at home. So Hazel component is sort of during the day as well as during the evening for students and families. Very unique program. We're very excited about it. We're meeting weekly, team members are meeting weekly to ensure that the provision and implementation is done without incident. It will begin in the month of October. So in October, this will officially begin in schools, if not sooner. A robust campaign this year was conducted throughout the summer, offering free immunizations to ensure compliance to the requirements. Heard one of the speakers this evening reference the provision of where this could take place. I can tell you this right now. This week, ending on tomorrow, we have been providing immunizations to any parent that is in need of their child to be immunized at Northwestern High School. So Northwestern High School is the school where it is occurring this week. We will continue operation of the 4 school-based wellness centers. The wellness center sites are Bladensburg, Fairmount Heights, Northwestern, and Oxon Hill High. Those are the 4 locations. We are currently, though, looking to see if we can hire and create an interviewing process for the physician's assistants. We are seeking that opportunity. We've been in communication with the local health department because currently our wellness centers are understaffed. The operating hours are 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. and 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Now, in speaking with our county health department officials last week, we were informed that they are developing a call-in number because I want to make it clear to all. Just because these are the 4 school sites, it does not mean that I have to be a student that resides in the northwestern boundary to attend that facility. It does not mean that these are the only sites. Well, these are the only sites, but it does not mean that if you do not reside in this site, you still can utilize any of these sites. Now, what the health department is currently creating is a call-in number. That call-in number, once it has been provided to us, will be provided to our parents and our constituents in our schools. Services at these sites include the areas that are referenced: behavioral health assessments, counseling, immunizations, physical examinations, and nutrition education. Now, unlike our telehealth services do not provide the provision of immunizations. Next slide, please. Mental health and behavioral supports. Our professional school counselors, and mental health clinicians are working in tandem consistently. The areas that I've referenced here are speaking specifically to what their roles are. Now, this is some of the roles. They are not certainly not all of the roles that they each will have. But the school support, the professional school counselors ultimately support school administrators. They investigate incidents of bullying, work, and work with students to address and de-escalate incidents as they arise at schools. They support students. They support through the domains of academic, social, emotional, and college and careers, which is consistent with the domains of their required area of expertise. They provide individual counseling to groups and classrooms, provide guidance to students in classrooms, students in crisis, case management of special populations, 504 students, and homeless students. What I'm really excited about as well is that now with the working together of our mental health clinicians and our professional school counselors, upon a student's return from suspension, the expectation is that every student be granted an opportunity to meet with the mental health clinician and professional school counselor. That is a part of the intake process whenever a student returns from suspension. That is not a you may choose, that is a mandate. The mental health clinicians, we have 167 mental health clinicians staffed in schools. What they do, they work in tandem with the school administration and with the professional school counselors. They consult with teachers and administrators. They provide professional development and workshops with parents and students. They support students as well in crisis. And they provide therapy to students, groups, and their families. And they also conduct classroom observations and actively participate in SIT meetings, school instructional team meetings. Meetings with students returning from suspension, as I've indicated previously, is an expectation as well. At this time, I'd like to turn the mic over to my colleague, Dr. Andrew Zuckerman.
Thanks, Dr. Coley. Good evening, board members. Nice to see you all in person. I'm going to give two updates. One, briefly, just on where we are with virtual learning this year, and then just the work we've done in technology to get ready for the school year. So first of all, with respect to virtual learning, the Maryland State Department of Education, MSDE, has created a new pathway for a system-wide virtual learning plan on days of inclement weather, as well as some other available days, such as staff professional development days or testing days. Dr. Golson shared with you a proposal for first reader at the last board meeting, and at the September 22nd board meeting, you'll have an opportunity to review it, discuss it, and after review and if approval, then we will submit it to the state superintendent for review and hopefully approval. And so that's taking place in districts right now all across the state, so I look forward to sharing that with you at the next meeting. Locally, our online campus, which is our virtual school that we launched last year, we're moving forward with that this year. We have students in grades 7 through 12, 399 students are enrolled. At the end of last year, we had 296 students returned, and another 103 students this year have opted into this program. I think the numbers really speak to most students' interest of being back in person, which is a really good thing. At the same time, we want to capitalize on the opportunities of virtual learning and the lessons we've learned over the last few years, and so we're continuing to build out that program. And we had a very successful year last year. A passing rate was over 96%. So we're doing really well in that area, and I'm excited about coming back in 2 weeks to share our system-wide virtual learning proposal for inclement weather days. Regarding technology, it was a busy summer. We leveraged ESSER funding, that's the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, to equip about 70% of our classrooms with new smart interactive flat panels. We're going to get to more classrooms this year with additional funding through the federal government, so I'm excited about that. We had a really great experience with 16 of our students this summer who worked through the county's Summer Youth Employment Program, and they helped our IT technicians repair over 3,000 damaged Chromebooks this summer, so it was really great to have our students involved in that. We benefited from it, they did, and I'm excited, hopefully that launches a career for them in the field of technology. We did a lot of training this summer, as Dr. White mentioned, around our rollout of Canvas, our district-wide learning management system. And one thing that we're looking to do both this year and in future years is really expand our ability to support our users remotely. So we added positions and staff members on our help desk, and that's something that we'll continue to refine in the years ahead as just our digital ecosystem is so different than it was a few years ago. Additionally, we're continuing to keep pace with the demand of just connectivity. So on our next slide, you can see that we've increased our internet bandwidth for the overall district up to 80 gig, which is a huge capacity. Each of our schools is now up to 10 gigs, which is more than enough bandwidth for the use during the school day, and obviously we monitor that very closely and will continue to invest in our network infrastructure as needed. Speaking of network infrastructure, I always have sleepless nights when I think about cybersecurity, and I'm sure you're familiar with what happened in LA a few days ago. So we're continuing to make investments in our cybersecurity infrastructure. This year, very soon actually, we'll be rolling out multi-factor authentication. That will strengthen our cybersecurity posture. We have some other investments that we'll be requesting as well going forward, but we just have to continue to stay current and keep the pace, and that's just the reality of the world we live in today. We're implementing this year we're developing, I should say, to implement for next enrollment season a electronic registration module inside SchoolMax, so that'll streamline a lot of the paperwork. That's our goal there. And we're working with our HR colleagues Dr. Baldwin, and her colleagues to bring on board a new applicant tracking system that will, again, streamline the process of bringing on and hiring new employees, because we just know how critical that is. So there's a lot of work that we're doing in this area. I'm sure I've left some things out, but happy to discuss it further. And in the meantime, I'll turn it over to Mr. Herbstman, our CFO.
Thank you, Dr. Zuckerman, and good evening, everyone. This school year, we have continued to increase our direct funding supports to our students. For the last 3 years, we have worked actively to devolve funding from central offices to schools where it could do the most good. Over 3 years, the average student-based budgeting allocation per student has increased by 21%, including 12% just for this last year. This gives our principals new opportunities within the funding source where they have the greatest autonomy, student-based budgeting. Excuse me. They're already using this additional money for great initiatives like lower class size, additional mathematics and reading supports to supplement some of the systematic investments discussed earlier, and many other areas that will improve student outcomes and wellness. Next slide, please. Schools will also receive new levels of centrally managed resources and supports for this school year, many of which are the items that my colleagues have discussed tonight. As the Chief Academic Officer outlined, we continue to invest this year in tutoring, academic software, interventions, and enrichment to mitigate the effects of interrupted instruction on our students. Physical, behavioral, and mental health supports are also expanding system-wide, as the Chief of School Leadership and Supports pointed out. She has outlined these plans, including the expansion of community schools and the addition of 27 new mental health clinicians this year. Pre-K and early childhood programs continue to open in areas of the county with demand where space is available. Along with all of our non-charter schools, the charter school per pupil allocation increased sharply this year. Our non-traditional programs have been redesigned to reach additional students. We have added funding for school building maintenance and sanitation, as you've likely noticed as you visited schools over the last 2 weeks. Since we exponentially increased our use of instructional technology over the last couple of years, as outlined by Dr. Zuckerman, we now need to move into a new phase of maintaining all of that technology. That includes funds for repairing and replenishing one-to-one student devices and the smart interactive flat panels, as well as expanding and safeguarding our networks while improving our cybersecurity posture. We recognize that there is nothing that we can do for our students that's more important than retaining and recruiting high-quality teachers and educational support personnel. This year, we took a large step in that direction. We're now in a place where all of our labor partner contracts include unprecedented raises that continue to make working at Prince George's County Public Schools very attractive in this highly competitive market. In addition to higher compensation for all of the full-time employees, we also focused on improving the pay of substitute teachers. The new raises make our substitute teachers the highest paid in the region. Next, I will turn over the presentation to my colleague, Associate Superintendent of Communications and Community Engagement, Ms. Ravenhill.
Thank you, Mr. Herbstman, and good evening, board members. On behalf of the Communications and Community Engagement team, I thank you all for sharing the sights and sounds of the new school year as we celebrate one PGCPS and continue to be PGCPS proud. Tonight, I will provide an overview of our key news and information sources for families and community members, starting with the SchoolMax Family Portal, which houses the most critical student information, including grades, attendance, and more. Parents will need their personal email address and student ID number, along with the personal and contact details listed on the slide. The link to access SchoolMax is on the PGCPS website at www.pgcps.org, and once registered, you can access the SchoolMax Family Portal mobile app. Next, we use the School Messenger platform for school-specific and school system-level notifications to families by pre-recorded phone messages, emails, text messages, and newsletters. School Messenger also allows us to segment topics and information by language preference, furthering our commitment to communicate with families as best we can in their native language. Families can subscribe to School Messenger also via the PGCPS website. Look for the banner on the bottom of the website, and you can sign up for text messages, emails, and newsletters. Many schools use their own tools and apps, such as Remind and Class Dojo, so we would certainly encourage families to subscribe to those as well. Overall, SchoolMax, School Messenger, and the school-based messaging platforms are only a fraction of the items in our communications toolkit to share useful information with our stakeholders and to tell the PGCPS story. The PGCPS website is available in English and Spanish, and it's our key news and information hub. It's the gateway to school websites and the school system's calendar, and we post emergency alerts on the website, so definitely bookmark it for those inclement weather days. We're always looking for ways to make the website more robust and user-friendly. I encourage everyone in the PGCPS community to check out the PGCPS newsroom, which is also accessible via the website. School Messenger is the key for getting that weekly family and community newsletter, Engage PGCPS. And you can follow us on social media, Facebook in English and Spanish, Instagram, Twitter. Look for us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Before I close, I would like to highlight our weekly news update on social media. It's a little short, about 1-minute video, which gives you the top news for the week. You can find in this back-to-school season the latest news in our very colorful back-to-school guide. It's available on the website and social media. And PG-13, the Emmy-nominated web series on PGCPS high school football, will premiere season 7 in the coming weeks. Thank you, and I will now turn the presentation back to Dr. Goldson.
Thank you. This concludes the team's presentation, and we look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, team. Now I will open the floor for discussion. And the lights are coming on, and Board Member Alvaro Cerrone Ruiz.
All righty,
Before we start, let me put some time limits out here. Should we have 3 rounds or 2 rounds? If we have 2 rounds, the first round will be 5 minutes, and the second round, 3 minutes. We have 3 rounds. The first round will be 5 minutes. Second round, 2 minutes, and the third round would be 2 minutes. Or I'll just cut you off. Okay. Alvaro.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Dr. Golson and ELT, for the amazing presentation. So firstly, in respect to what was mentioned by Ms. Serrano and Dr. Lemus in public comment, I wanted to put in the request for follow-up to receive the data information for our Latino student achievement. So whether that be graduation dropout rates, testing metrics, because I'm sure the benchmark wasn't split up into groups, so I would like to see that. Also, how our ELL and special education Latinos are performing as a follow-up. And in respect towards our ELLs, I wanted to also ask how we are doing with the ELL for focus work group recommendations. So to be more specific, firstly, with the plan to have 100% of our instructional staff and support staff having properly been trained to instruct ELL students, where are we with that?
We'll provide an update for the ELL work, the work group update. I already wrote that down, and we'll provide the Latino achievement for graduation, which we actually already provided. But I'll direct you back to the presentation that we did last year for last year's graduation, and we'll look to see if we can disaggregate the data in benchmarks.
Okay, so when you say the follow-up, it'll be of all the recommendations?
I'll provide it probably in the weekly update where I normally put information for the entire board.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty.
Are you through?
I'm not, I got more questions. So firstly, Dr. Fawcett, in terms of facility prep, my first question was regarding safety and security officers. You mentioned there will be 10 additional ones, and this is in schools or in the county, and what exactly is the role of these assistants?
Yeah, so we're hiring 10 additional security assistants that will be dispersed throughout the county based on need when we do an assessment. So we've been in the process of doing that. We have some vacancies. I think we've advertised twice this summer, and I believe a advertisement just closed either today or yesterday. So we'll be interviewing. Yes, but they go into schools.
They go into schools, okay. And secondly, I am sure a bill, I believe it was passed last legislative session regarding menstrual hygiene products. How are we with that decimation? I know it was passed where it was to be required in all schools in the bathrooms for free. And I believe the bill stated that they would be implemented October of 2022. I'm not sure if that's being done, but I'm sure that was a bill that was passed, so.
I'll have our general counsel team review. I didn't think it passed, but we'll check it.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then for Dr. Strader, thank you for the cohort tracker phase 2. I think that is amazing. I definitely always hear from counselors and our admins how crazy it is to track, especially seniors, being a senior myself. So thank you for that. You mentioned the parent portal and having access to assessments for parents. That is through SchoolMax, correct? So they could just go into SchoolMax and that's the category there?
It will be connected to SchoolMax, so you would have a single sign-on, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Moving along. Dr. White, in regards to Canvas. So I know we are making that full transition to Canvas, but I do want to know if Google Classroom is still available for teachers, because I know some of our program coordinators like Science and Tech or some of our club sponsors use Google Classroom because I think it's more easier to make like any type of classroom. Is that access still available, or will that be, removed once we?
So our hope is in the classroom that we're transitioning every classroom to Canvas because, and again, you heard me mention tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So we identify that we have new teachers coming on, that we have teachers even who were here last year that may not have been trained. Our hope is that as we progress during this year, that their level of comfortability grows. So you might right now have a teacher that's operating in 2 places, but they have to come into Canvas because that is where the curriculum is. So most teachers would have gained their curriculum through our Access Wheel, which was on our site, and we cut that off and put everything, all their resources, everything drives from Canvas. Even for students, your textbook's Clever, we try to put everything inside. They're able, though, to begin to pull in all of their Google Docs. It's compatible with Google, so we're trying to move them over. We do identify that we're starting up. Teachers are trying to be comfortable. They're trying to start students day 1. And so because of that, we know that we're going to be moving them in from Tier 1 to Tier 2 to Tier 3 when they get comfortable. Our goal is that our entire district will be a Canvas district.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, looking at my time, Dr. Coley. I swear that's at 1 minute. I swear that's at 1 minute.
Because you're the student.
All right.
And I'm going to ask my team to try to be brief because their time is ticking. Okay.
All right, so I'll go second round. It's okay. Can I give my last question?
It'll count as your second round.
Oh, okay, that's okay, okay. My last question, Dr. Coley. You mentioned the new non-traditional programs. Can we get more information in terms of the students who are being enrolled into that? I know roughly about them, but I would like to hear more, especially with, you know, all of the crime going around, especially with our juveniles. I definitely would like to learn more about the non-traditional programs.
I'm just going to jump in really quick, just because I had the opportunity to visit our non-traditional sites the very first week of school. So first, let me state that our non-traditional schools are not for students who commit crimes. It is for students who need a flexible schedule.
Okay.
Who have other responsibilities along with achieving their high school diploma. So we have some students who start the school day an hour later than others. We have some who come in the afternoon. We have some who come and leave around 12 and may go to work. It's extreme. What it does is creates an individualized plan for each student so that they're able to meet their graduation requirements. They've added an additional period so that in a semester, a child can actually move from grade 9 to 10, whereas the last schedule we had before, they couldn't, because they could only do 4 credits in a school year, in a semester, where you need 5 to move from one grade level to the next. I'd love for you to come and visit. The climate is completely different than what it was before, and I'm so proud to showcase those students who are very focused on obtaining their high school diploma.
Okay, thank you, and I hope you send the email with the locations and when you're available so we go together.
We'll go together in October.
All right. But thank you so much, ELT, and that is all my questions.
Thank you. Board Member Frazier.
Thank you, Alvaro. You capture a lot of the questions that I had in my extensive list, so that helps me. Thank you, ELT, for your amazing presentation. I was very excited to hear of all the wonderful things that are coming our way. I do have some questions about specifically the benchmarks. Thank you for explaining that this is just a moment in time. I would have loved to see the same moment in time last year to see how we could compare those. So that would be, I would like that information. Also, what's the data on benchmark 3? How many, which teachers and what groups are actually being captured in that benchmark 3 that you mentioned, that is not across the board but all the schools? So I'm wondering about that in terms of demographics. I also, I distinctly remember that we wanted a breakdown in terms of demographics, in terms of ethnicity, and I also want to find out how our black males are doing, black and brown males, so specifically to that, because I haven't seen the data. And of course, based on the information that our presenters shared, I'm very interested in knowing what are the specific skills and tactics that are being used to reach our ELL families. There's a lot of information there about like the tutoring program, for example. What is the access, though?
We have it down, but I also refer back to slide 21, which gave a glimpse of a moment in time from quarter from benchmark from 2021 to 2022. So I would recommend going back to look at that, and if you still have questions, please let us know.
Yeah, the question was, basically the way I saw the slide was that in looking at that specific benchmark, specifically because we're focusing in math, we had a 94% did not meet expectations in benchmark 1 or 2 for math. So I would love to see it broken down that way as well.
Right, you're asking for year to year, correct? Got it. We'll take care of it.
Thank you.
Have you, Board Member Mickens Murray?
Thank you. Dr. Bolton and leadership team, you are number one in my book. A lot of work went into this document. You have focused on what I believe are some of the things that I know I want to see our students do. And you've also become cheerleaders for our students. When I listen to you talk about it, you are saying you believe that our students can accomplish these things. So what I will use this document for, and I fold it over a few pages, as we go through the year, my questions will come from what have you accomplished against what you told me you were going to do. And that's what I will look at. I appreciate this. I appreciate the work that you put in this. I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be talking in this. I appreciate the work that you've put in this document, because it's a lot of work and I can see that. And I also appreciate you're looking at all students, the attention that you're paying attention to the Latino students, the attention that you're paying to bullying in the schools, the climate. You're looking at the entire operations. And it tells me that you're looking at a quality of life experience for our children as they go through this system. Now, appreciating the learning loss, I get that, I understand that, but I also recognize here that you are tackling that, which I appreciate. So, thank you so much. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. And I will promise you this, in the sermon that I heard this Sunday, all for one, one for all. I'm one of the all for one and one for all. I will help you any way I can. Just let me know. And I'm willing to read to students. I'm saying that publicly. So just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. For Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you. I may need like 3 rounds because I have a bunch of notes. So let me start with just sort of talking about one of the comments from our public speakers in regards to the Latino community, that the recently arrivals. And I know we have this information shared during the summer and beginning of the school year, how we can work with the health department to get those students. And I would just like to have that shared with me so that we can continually push that out. And especially, we need to continually share it with those communities such as the Maryland Latino UNIDO group, so that they have it as well. I know it always comes out at the beginning of the year. The second thing is, can you provide us with, and you mentioned it in the opening statement, a schedule of the release of the official certified test and data information? I know we get information throughout the year, but I think if we had it in one report, we can know when graduation rates get certified, when those tests come back, so we can know when to expect, so that we can ask you the questions after you get the certification. So now on the presentation, first of all, you have an amazing, dynamic, and thoughtful group of leaders. I appreciate each and every one of you. That's why I have so many notes. So I'm going to start with Dr. Fawcett. I so appreciate the stop finder that we use. I was wondering if we can get some information about how the bus stop hubs are being utilized, from the recommendation that we made before the pandemic, now that we are into a full year of this. The second question is around security and the SROs. You remember a few years ago, we had a discussion about SROs, and there was a recommendation from the community on that. Based on what we're seeing, I mean, we ended the school and we began the school under a national cloud of violence. And so I know that there are parents out there that are very concerned about students and going to school. So I would love to hear about how that recommendation may have changed, and if we can just get some information on that, if it has changed, because I think that there is a need for a change. And so if there is a change, I would like to hear about that. So that's all I have for Dr. Fawcett. Dr. Christy Murphy, hyphen, and I always forget your Baldwin. I am so sorry, but I love the fact that we have changed the discussion around teacher experience, you know, because I think that we cannot expect people to choose to become teachers if we're always talking about that negative side. So I love the fact that we're doing that, and you know, I am an advocate for supporting that positive communication. The redeploying of some of our executive staff members into the classroom, I would love to see if if it makes a difference in our vacancy rate for teachers. I think the rate that you put up there was like 89% of vacancy rates. But if we're deploying administrative office staff into the classrooms, what is that new percentage? Because if we keep them there all year, then it's really not a vacancy. We have, you know, the best teachers in front of us, in front of our students, and so I'd just like to see what that is, because I think it makes a difference in the narrative that we're trying to share. Dr. Strader, we've heard a lot about the breaking down of the Latino community and that data. I think one of the breakdowns that we really should include is whether or not there is a long-term student versus a recently arriving student. Right now, we lump them all in one bucket, but our students that have been here from, you know, either kindergarten on or have been here for a few years, their achievement data is different from those recently arrivals, and we know that we will get students at all grade levels, including the 12th grade level, and so that could impact what the Latino graduation is if we have a large number of recently arrivals in the 10th or, the 11th or 12th grade. So when we discuss the achievement rates, I would really like to see that broken down, because it makes a difference. And I think that we diminish the achievements of some of our Latino students that have been here for a long time by those that have recently arrived and they have to get into the culture. So I have a lot more. I was only on the third. And I will start with Dr. Strader when I return. Thank you.
Okay. Board Member Adam Stafford.
All right, thank you so much for this information and this presentation. And I do appreciate all the time that has gone into putting this information and this data together. I'm going to start my questions with thinking specifically about the testing. And so, you know, quite frankly, Dr. Golson, this presentation does not encompass all that we have asked for back in May. And while I do think that this document is a beautiful document, and I'm very happy to hear about all of the instructional strategies that we will be using, I'm not seeing any metrics or goals specifically around academic achievement. For example, like we want to, something measurable, like we want to see growth specifically in math by this percentage by this date, or we want to see a growth in ELA scores by this date. We really need that type of baseline to understand sort of, you know, what all of these instructional strategies and programs are amounting to. And so I would like to see more of that, you know, very targeted understanding of where we're going in terms of student academic achievement. Some of my questions have to do with testing specifically, I wanted to ask if you could share we asked for the results of the third benchmark, and so I'm not seeing that in the presentation. Also specifically, this is for Mr. Zuckert, we talked a lot about the interventions that have been used with ESSER funds, and we asked specifically to have a breakdown of all of the interventions that were used for ELA and math and the efficacy of those programs. So I don't think that we, in these presentations, have had a comprehensive view of sort of what were the programs that were the most effective in moving student achievement and how much did they cost, and then if those have been renewed. I mean, I think that our goal is to fund programs that are giving us the most bang for our buck, and so we haven't really seen a breakdown of the effectiveness of the software that has been purchased. So we'd like to see that. Additionally, I wanted to see, I don't think that we've seen the results of the student surveys that have been administered. I think that that's an important thing for us to understand in regards to student climate and in regards to, just understanding, how all of this is translating to the student experience. So we'd like to see I know I'd like to see some of those results. And then specifically, I had asked for information regarding the percentage of students that were on track for passing Algebra 1. I do appreciate the slides that have talked about the aggregate information regarding math and ELA, but more specifically, we'd like to know around the core subject areas. So ELA, math, science, and social studies, understanding, what is happening at grade level for each of those content areas, and then have that information disaggregated by race, special education, which we have not really talked about this evening, and English language learners. Essentially what I'm asking for is that, taking this data that has been presented and extrapolating it even more so that we can have more information about how different subgroups are performing and what are the goals around those groups. So if we look at Latino student achievement and we realize that, there's, some challenges with our early, math scores, what are the goals around that? Like, what do we want to see by next year? And we know the strategies on how we're going to get there, but what are the actual goals around that? Lastly, I wanted to ask if I could get an update on the WMATA pilot from Dr. Fawcett. We had asked, many board members had reached out and asked for this last year, and I know that there was a pilot that started at High Point, but how has that, what were the results of that, and how has that been expanded to this upcoming year?
Thank you, Board Member Adam Stafford. Board Member Boozer Strother.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for the excellent presentation and covered so many topics that I know parents are concerned about now, and I want to thank my colleagues for the questions that they've already asked, so I'll move on to some other topics. I do want to ask Dr. Fawcett about buses. There's some extreme cases right now of completely canceled routes, and I know there's some schools that there's not even a substitute consolidated. What are we going to say to, what are we saying to those parents about bus service? Like how much longer they're going to go without any bus service, or if that should not be happening and we have a specific problem to resolve for a particular school?
Very distinctly, we haven't canceled any bus routes. What we attempt to do for those uncovered routes is either have bus drivers fill in, meaning doubling up the routes, or after they finish for their route, to go pick those routes up. There may be instances or two where that communication may have not gone through, but we have not canceled any routes. We try to pick up every route every day.
Okay, then I'll address this specific issue with you. I didn't know how widespread this was, so
Yes,
I appreciate that. Sounds like it's not. Also, some of the other issues at the start of the school year has been registering students and backlogs. If we could have an update on how personnel have been deployed and where we are with how many students are still in the registration process to get their school max ready and to report to class. I don't know if that's something that could be answered now or if that needs to be.
Yeah, we're continuing to monitor that and provide staff to support our schools that have new registrars and so forth, that we can provide you that data. It changes daily, but we are making great strides with our schools. I can share with you, within this past week, we had, opening closings Wednesday, so a week ago Wednesday, we had over 6,000 students in the queue in Scribs anyway. Scribs is the registration software that we use. This past Wednesday, we had that down to 1,400. So now that staff's back, 10-month employees are back, and we're deploying staff where we need to help address those vacancies. The numbers are coming down.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I know that you gave a really good report to the Operations, Budget, and Fiscal Affairs Committee last year on some of the challenges and then some of the solutions. And I guess I would just say to the board that we need to continue to look at this as a budget and operations priority, because now we've seen it happen at least 2 years in a row. So I did want to call that out. And then also Canvas was mentioned, and I think the issue of parents and Canvas as the next sort of training module would be great for the parents who are now middle school parents, and helping our students with that big step of having to manage themselves in this new way. And I know that there's some excellent trainings on the website already for staff and teachers, and I would love to see parent training on that as well from that perspective. And the issue of the state test, I was curious about if there's information from the state superintendent around, you had already discussed that the benchmarks, the assessment hasn't even been completed, and I was wondering about these last 2 years where nothing at all has been standard, for our students. They are not the same cohort as they were before the pandemic and would have been without a pandemic. Like today's 7th graders are not the same as 2019, 2020 7th graders, from the obvious virtual and hybrid learning, which was very difficult on our children, from the missed experiences like Camp Schmidt, after-school programs like America Counts, science fairs. These are not the same 7th graders as 2019, and parents painfully feel this when you look at this MCAP and you see the results. That is not our children. Like, we know our children are achieving more than this number. And I'm so eager for us to get to some understanding as a board and a school system on this topic. And I want to thank my colleagues for hearing this perspective. Thank you.
Board Member Murray.
I believe the data presented tonight for literacy started at grade 3. Is that correct?
The benchmark information, that chart for the benchmarks?
Yeah, we didn't get any literacy information prior to grade 3 tonight, did we?
Yeah, this was combining the benchmarks in ELA and mathematics. I did not provide an individual grade level breakout. We can provide that.
And what grade did the benchmark start in?
We start with a kindergarten, second administration, correct? And then it continues through, up through high school.
Okay. Are those read aloud in those grades, those early grades? Or do the students read them themselves?
I wouldn't speak to that. It depends on, there's different formats. We start in kindergarten, if that's where your area of focus is. We start with a kindergarten readiness assessment. So that's why we don't initiate with the first benchmark, then we go into the second and third. But yes, there is an interactive tool where the teacher has to interact with the student to complete the assessments.
Yeah, I guess my question is around our early literacy assessments, like our foundational reading skills. It's difficult to tease out from this data what % of our students are reading on grade level at kindergarten at first and at second, and when we look at our data from grades 3 through 12, that's going to follow, right? If a student's not reading on grade level going into third grade, it's highly unlikely that they're just going to magically catch up in those later grades, and it's going to impact their math as it's read aloud. Because we didn't get that tonight, it would be helpful for me if we had this same type of forum just around K2 foundational skills. I mean, you spent some time going through the science of reading and some of the instructional changes we've made, but this board has zero picture of what % of our students are able to read on grade level at those critical early grades. I mean, I got a better sense of where DC schools are reading on grade level at those grades just in the Washington Post, and yet we serve on the school board here and are holding a public forum, and we don't know, is it 50% of students, is it 10? Like, those grades are just critical grades. So I think it would be imperative that this board have this same forum, particularly focused on that, because those are really gateway grades for our students in all subjects. My second point is around tutoring. So, we listed off a lot of names tonight. Has this board gotten a comprehensive results back in terms of what our return was on this tutoring, like what students moved, what was learned, what wasn't? I mean, it's nice to say we have these resources, but we got historic levels of funding in ESSER, and as a board member, I'm unclear in terms of what was accomplished. Have we been provided with that in a comprehensive way for all of our different tutoring partners?
We have the reports that we have to create for MSDE around those, so we can provide those to Dr. Golson. We just finished working on them because a lot of them take place at different points of the year, and then when the funding starts at the beginning of the year, we may not have started last year. I think when I first presented, some of them started November, some of them started December, but we have to fill out a report for MSDE so we can provide that.
They've been provided in the weekly updates to board members every quarter. It's also posted on our website. In addition, we also did a kindergarten readiness presentation as well.
Okay, if you could reshare that would be great. I was looking through the weekly reports before I asked, and I was
Yeah,
struggling.
you can go to last year's. I do it every quarter, and it's also posted on our website. I'll provide the link.
Okay, that would be very helpful. I mean, that would be helpful just in this public forum as well, to really be going through those when we're spending tens of millions of dollars on tutoring, like everyone
It was
should.
also shared in Academic Achievement Committee.
Right, and so I think for the whole board, I mean, the whole board should really be looking at academic achievement. So I think that would be a valuable topic to come back. And my last point or question around curricula, correct me if I'm wrong, our elementary literacy curricula, that's an in-house curricula from PGCPS, correct?
The documents that we create but they are aligned to, in one we use Benchmark Advance, and the other one, I'll provide you with the one for 3rd through 5th. So we go through textbook adoption he said speaking to Mike. We go through a textbook adoption, and then from the textbook, we then write our internal curriculum with all the supports.
So it's Benchmark Advance?
That's one of them. We have another one for the higher grades, and I can provide those.
That would be great.
Sure.
Yeah, I would welcome the opportunity to have this forum and this level of depth around those foundational grades and literacy. I think that would tie in well with our tutoring resources, a lot of which were aligned to those, and potentially we could talk about curricula as well. That would be appreciated.
Is that it? Board Member Valentine.
Thank you. And again, Dr. Golson, to your staff, thank you so much for all you do. I think we can both appreciate what we've done, but also look forward and make sure that we're moving forward. So I think we can do both at the same time, which I think we're doing. I have a few questions. A lot of my colleagues have covered other questions, so I'll try to be brief, particularly as it relates to school safety. We start off the first day of school with stories about guns in our schools. And so I guess my first question is how are we working with the county to ensure that we could guarantee to parents that we do not have an issue with guns in our schools?
So we meet regularly with the county police. We had actually a forum before school started where we talked about doubling our efforts and increasing our communication. We've scheduled regularly quarterly meetings with the police department. We need help of all the community, not only the county police department, but as Dr. Golson has said in past forums, we need help with our families to make sure and to ensure that students aren't bringing these weapons into school. But we will continue to improve our communication with the county police department.
Thank you. Second question is around sort of staffing. Again, to see the 89% number, I believe I saw some data that we're at a 4-year low for the number of staff that we have moved on. So again, that's encouraging. At the same time, you know, every teacher that's not filled, every classroom that's potentially overcrowded is an issue. And so my question particularly is the solutions. Have we used staff referral and how we're using our existing staff to identify potential staff? I think some of our best advocates for teaching in our district are going to be our current teachers. Is that something we've tried before?
So that is one of the things that we're trying to work on. You are exactly right. In my presentation in May, I shared that our number one recruitment strategy is our employees. So the more that we can get our employees to actually go out and be brand ambassadors and get them to bring, to join PGCPS, the better off we are when it comes to our recruitment efforts. So we do tap into our brand ambassadors, and we had a group of teachers this summer that worked with us at our hiring paloozas and our hiring events. And so we'll continue to capitalize on that effort, on those efforts.
I was thinking more directly with even a referral bonus, or some other districts that have actually given staff certain cash advances if a staff member stays a certain period of time. Do we have the resources to do that?
That is something we can look into. We have not done that previously, but that is a conversation that I'm happy to have with Chief Herbstman sitting right next to me. Look at how he just smiled at that.
Thank you. Next question is around the cohort tracker and the ability for parents to sort of track courses that kids are taking. Does that include dual enrollment classes at the community college at Prince George's?
Yeah, so all the courses that are needed to satisfy the graduation requirements are being included in that. So we need to track those courses and the students' progress through those courses.
Because I imagine in some instance there are students who are taking community college courses that are going to count towards graduation.
So, yep, there's a difference between dual enrollment and dual credit courses. So like you just said, there are some courses that they're taking to satisfy their graduation requirement. And then there are some courses they're taking as part of dual enrollment that they can use toward college. So the ones that they have to use that will help to satisfy graduation are captured in the cohort track.
Is there a way to add the other community college courses so that parents can track whether their child is on track to?
The problem is we're talking about two different institutions with two different interfacing pieces, and now we're into FERPA. So you got an issue where, and you'll find this out when your child goes to college, you don't really have access to your child's grades. They do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the issue with the community college.
Okay. My second last question is around Hazel Health and these health centers and also the telehealth. Is this in place of nurses in our school buildings or in addition to?
In addition to.
Okay. And the last question, I think in relationship to my colleagues, and I appreciate Board Member Murray and Adam Stafford's emphasis on data, this being a data-driven board. I would also like to have data on charter schools broken out. Similar across all the areas that we've talked about, but how are students going in and coming out of our charter schools? I saw we're increasing funding for charter schools, and if they're doing something right or not doing something right, I just want to know, be able to use that as a model moving forward. Thank you.
I would like to ask a question. Round one is on. Dr. Baldwin, your recruiting palooza, I have had a conversation with the state legislator and one of our county council members who are both Latina, and their concern is that we have she gave me a statistic of 40% population in the school system, and we don't see Latina teachers. Had you ever thought about, well, as we did at one point, I don't think you were in the system that, Dr. Golson probably was, when we did bring in teachers from the Philippines. And I'm sure your recruiters, the Palooza, would love to go to one of the Latin American countries or universities. I mean, it's a thought to do some recruitment. We have to think outside the box. We've got a need, and we're just not achieving it right here. So I don't know about the cost factor, but it's a thought.
Yes, we actually, when I joined Prince George's County Public Schools in 2018, we were actually one of the first school districts to go to Puerto Rico 3 times a year to recruit our teachers. That stopped during the pandemic, and unfortunately, Mr. Thomas was supposed to accompany us on that trip in April, but it happened. So we're looking forward to trying to resume that. I had the opportunity to go over to one of our Spanish immersion programs at the opening of school, and we actually have 4 educators from Puerto Rico who are teaching that were actually also former principals in Puerto Rico. So they all want to work together to try to get those efforts back. We also collaborate with MSDE in a bridge program where we do support hiring individuals with J1 visas. And we have MOUs, Dr. White, correct me if I'm wrong, with Spain, Italy, and Taiwan.
So when you go to Spain or Italy, can I be on that?
We will definitely keep you posted on our recruitment
I just wanted
trip.
to throw that out because to let the public know that the effort is being made. It's not that we're just staying local. We have expanded our search outside of the United States. Thank you. That was my round 1. Now we're moving into round 2. Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you. I'm going to quickly run through this because we have a short period of time. On slide 12, where we talk about the ESSA and Title I highlights that we're focusing on, if any of these programs are virtual or electronic, I would love to give access to non-Title I schools because we do have students that need that service that could benefit from the service. The parent portal is great. Can we get I appreciate this opening school presentation. But when we hit those things on personnel and data and things like that throughout the year, I would love to see how we have reduced the number of assessments over time. Because we talk about it, but I think it's important that the community sees it in an actual number versus just saying we have taken away tests. Because I know when I first got on the board, we were doing a lot of assessments throughout the year for students. This is for Dr. White. The digital literacy in class requirement because we're moving in such a time in which students are using these devices, will we ever get rid of the Foundations of Technology course since we are moving towards the utilization of digital devices? My understanding is the Foundation of Literacy was to support those students that didn't have access and things like that, making sure they have
It's actually it's a state requirement.
It's a state requirement.
When the state gets rid of it is when we would, as long as the state has as a requirement for graduation, we'd have to offer it.
Can we begin discussions with them so that we move in that time? Because I think at a certain point, we will not need that Foundations of Literacy if everyone is using if we are one-to-one community. Maybe we can get a waiver. But that's just my thought. On slide number 25, we talk about the math focus, and we talked about the, I need a little bit more time than that. I need a little bit more time.
We have 2, you can come back,
Okay.
write your questions down.
I do, but
I
I will.
would be glad to respond to you.
Okay.
You're taking up too much time talking to me now. Next, Board Member Frazier.
Thank you. I'm wondering if we're working on creating, again, on one of the things that our constituents are asking is for data transparency. Are we working on creating a dashboard for student performance right in front of our website that shows dual enrollment and, of course, data, AP, IB, SAT, all the diploma types, all of that information in one place, because I know that that's a big issue when I go to the schools. Parents are telling me, I don't know where to find the data. And that is even more complicated for our Latino parents. So I'm wondering if we're working to compile that.
We've had individual data dashboards that are real time. Like, for example, you could pull up today for yesterday's attendance. You can pull up today for yesterday's suspension. It's on every school's home page.
I'm talking about an integrated.
So we can put a link on the main page to show people how to get to it.
Right.
But they want their school data. We did a presentation for the board where it showed that parents go directly to their school data before they come to the school website, before they come to the main page. But we can put a link on the main page on how to get to their school specific, and it's real time.
Yeah, it would also be great if we had a compiled information for the district. That's what I'm talking about. The other question that I have is mental health and professional counselors. You mentioned that we have them, and it sounds like they have very tall order in terms of duties that they're doing. What is the caseload for them?
It varies. It varies by school. There are several providers that we have. It's not the same provider at each school, so it varies by school in terms of their caseload.
Do you have an average?
I would hate to give you a number this evening and it not be accurate, so I can certainly get that information for you.
Thank you. And the last question I have is, how many new Latinx teachers were we able to hire during this season?
Oh, here goes. I have to get back.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That's it.
Is that it? Board Member Miller, Zipporah Miller.
I also want to thank Dr. Golson and the executive team for this extensive report. And as I went through, my colleagues have asked most of the questions, but I may have missed something when you talked about the wellness centers. Was that where you were talking about the physician's assistants, that you're still trying to staff them with physician's assistants?
That is correct, at the 4 school locations.
At the, are they paid physician's assistants, or is this a service?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Are they paid physician's assistants?
This is an effort through the health department, through the county health department.
Okay.
And they're paid by them.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I was writing my notes and I couldn't find them. The other one just came up, and I think one of my colleagues had talked about it, and I knew when the conversation started about reducing assessments, but I want us to think about the push and pull about this, because we ask for data, and the only way we can get data is if we give assessments, right? So so in terms of the balance, as we ask for the executive team to look at reducing the number of assessments, then we also need to think about, that means we need to also consider what type of data we're asking for.
That it?
Thank you.
Board Member Adam Stafford.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Schrader, I had a quick clarifying question. Were you saying that we use the same cut score across all tests in the aggregated data that you gave us?
That is correct, for the benchmarks, yes.
For each, like, grade level and also, like, different subject area?
So what you see there are the raw scores based on the students, and we used, I believe it was like a 25%, 70%, something like that as the low reporting band and the high reporting band.
Okay, I just wanted to see if maybe, we could talk or we could learn a little bit more about just sort of how those cut scores maybe should vary based on the differences in the test, because I think that I have never heard of that, like using it across all tests, but, considering that each test is different and it changes from year to year, I haven't heard of that strategy. And that brings me to my next question. We're saying that the state data is unreliable and the district data can't be used based off of the state data. So what are we to use in terms of student proficiency and to understand where students land?
Let me clarify. I said state data, MCAP, that was administered last fall. Not this one that just happened in the spring, but the fall, because it didn't have the constructive response component to it. And the state only did it so that they'd be in compliance with the federal government. But they have administered reliable assessments in the spring, and that is why we're waiting for those results, because they're doing standard setting. Thank you.
Okay. My last question is, if we have asked about the status of the expansion of learning hubs to be possibly a year-round program, so I wanted to know the status of that. And then for Dr. Corley, I wanted to know, are we partnering with community mediation services as a preventative measure in a lot of our schools?
I am unfamiliar with the company that you just referenced.
Okay, great. I can give you, it's an organization countywide, and they provide mediation services at no cost. And if we could get one of those centers in each school, that could be a great preventative measure.
Board Member Murray.
Thank you. I wanted to circle back to the curricula piece. I wanted to see if we could get some general agreement about revisiting this topic. Colleagues, I can't think of something that's more important to talk about than what curricula we're using with our children. That impacts everything, right? Like, that's what our teachers are working off of. And I hate to see our students potentially in a situation where they're not achieving just as a result of not being offered the best curricula they possibly could. I know we've talked about this before in the past. I mean, in my cursory review of Benchmark Advance, it partially meets expectations by Ed Reports, which is an organization that all they do is review curricula. There are many curricula for elementary school that fully meet. And so I guess I'm curious about why we haven't, you know, as we embrace the science of reading and do these other things, I think it's a great time to make that movement away from a curricula that's not meeting across the board into one that's more fully aligned. So I would be curious to kind of hear the logic and thought process from the administration.
Not a problem. When we go through textbook adoptions, we usually stay in adoption for 6 years, which is why we write the majority of our curriculum. So when Benchmark Advance first came out, they've continually made adjustments to that curriculum, and then Ed Reports reviews at certain periods of time. So there have been adjustments made to move certain pieces where those pieces are lacking, because when we get the report, we're very clear on what's missing is where we fill in, which is why we brought in science of reading. So the areas by which it's low, we have filled in with science of reading. So we buy the supports, the resources, all those things to fill those gaps. But we can definitely talk about it more, and I can actually, when reading comes to academic achievement, I believe that is in November, we can definitely talk about it then and bring that information to be shared.
That would be helpful. And I mean, I know it's difficult to supplement and add as we go along, and I don't know what year we are in that 6-year adoption cycle, but it's too long to wait when there are other curricula that are free and low cost.
Board Member, we're moving into the third round. Board Member Boozer Strother. Well, then it's her turn then. Oh, okay, well, it was Elvira.
Did like 30 seconds of round 3. Alrighty, so just for clarification for the data, because of what was mentioned by Board Member Williams, I would ask that the data for the Latino performance be separated by Latinos and ELLs. I'm sure when we have students who come in from another country and go into 11th grade or 12th grade, they are more than often put into the ELL program, so I'm sure the data will reflect that. And so also, question for Dr. Murphy Baldwin. I know we mentioned the J1 visas. I wanted to circle on the H1B visas and see if we are using those, or is that standard practice?
We do not employ, do sponsorship of employees. PGCPS does not sponsor employees through the H1 visa program.
Okay. I do remember seeing it in the ELL recommendations, so I'm not sure if.
We did, we actually provided a response back because we had a federal case about it. We cannot.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Board Member Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you. I'm going to go real quick. Again, I look forward to the presentations where we talk curricula, HR, and things like that throughout the year, and it's important to attend the meetings in order to get the data. When we talk about on slide number 25, when we talk about mathematics, and you talked about feedback from students and things like that, what is the best way for parents to provide feedback when these systematic mathematic focuses aren't being achieved, specifically when we have a long-term sub in those classrooms? What is the best way for there to be feedback? And so I like the fact that we're providing the students with a voice on the curriculum. Is there a way for parents to provide some input on the curriculum as well? Now, Dr. Coley, I like the fact that we have 96 schools that are community schools. I always advocate that we need something in District 9. We do not have community schools in any of in District 9, and we could use those services even if they're combined in one location and they serve all the ones in District 9. Returning students who have been suspended, I'm glad that we're now requiring counseling, because a lot of times when we have those appeals on students, we've been asking for some type of return program for those students. Mr. Zuckerman, staff professional development days, and you mentioned something about the student continuing learning. Are we now going to not have students have that day off? Will they continue to learn virtually? I would love to know that. How many seats are available in the virtual school? I heard something around the 400 level. Are we still at 400? I thought we started at 700. I love the fact that we have the hands-on experience for students to take apart and put together those devices, because I've opened many stores that do you break, we fix type deal. So I think that hit most of them, but I'll send some more later. Thank you so much.
Board Member Frazier.
So this last question is about the PGCPS TV. I know that you mentioned that we have a lot of ways to communicate with our families. I'm wondering if in the past we've used TV in Spanish to work on providing news, events, even instruction for our parents in terms of, like, for example, there is a novela format, like a soap opera format that teaches parenting skills. Have we ever used anything that looks like that, or are we thinking about doing it? If not?
So I don't want to say we've never done it. To the extent that we've shown Spanish language programming, it was probably more classroom type program, but that's something we can certainly look into.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Adam Stafford.
My question was around just following up about the learning hubs. I wanted to see if I could get an answer on that. Could we start there?
Yeah, you sent an email yesterday, and a response will be delivered to you tomorrow at 8 a.m.
Okay, thank you. My other question was around, since we are using so many online applications for intervention, have we thought about moving to a district-wide skinny period for all students? I've heard of some districts having like a wings period, what I need to grow and strive, or something where every day there's a 1 hour block where there's enrichment or there's intervention. I hear us talking about doing this within the individual classroom, but because we're making such a huge investment in these programs, is this something we've considered to do district-wide?
I would say not at this time. When we purchased a lot of our interventions, we're doing exactly what you said. So this is our second year. At the end of this year, throughout this year and at the end of this year, we'll be evaluating which ones we will not use, because whether they've not made an impact or whether we've provided in the schools aren't using them. So we're looking at a range of data to determine which ones are relevant. And then each of them may touch a different grade span, a different content. So at this point in time, we have not looked at it to impact the school day. There are other things that also have to take place when you impact the school day. You add more time one place, you take time away from something else. So it's something definitely we can look at over time, as we're also looking at what interventions are making an impact and will stay.
Yeah, I would say I think that would be a really worthwhile, very specific change that could have a really large-scale impact, like in terms of looking at maybe the master schedule of the lowest performing schools and giving this very targeted suggestion with all of that we've invested in it. I think that could go just such a long way.
Thank you. That concludes the questions and question session and the third round. If you have additional questions, please write them down, and I would think that if you send them to the appropriate personnel, you will get a prompt response. And speaking of prompt responses, I'd like to thank Dr. Golson and her team. Recently, some board members attended the MAKO conference, and we met several businesses that have offered services to our system. And I'd like to thank Dr. Golson and her team for setting up meetings to meet with these people. One entity was that security system that was introduced, and then another one was that North Bay program, and it was several. In essence, we go to these conferences to bring back information, and it's greatly appreciated that our CEO and her team do follow up with these recommendations and are using some of those sources for our school system. So again, thank you for this great presentation, your patience, and your follow-up. And Dr. Golson, I have to compliment you as as an administrator, and well, for you, the reports that you give us every week, your weekly reports, they've been very comprehensive, very eye-opening, and enlightening, and informative, most of all. So I thank you for that. And some of the questions that have been asked tonight have been included in your report. So I think maybe we need to continue to review the report that you send out to this board on a weekly basis. And I want the public to know that this is information that is given to us on a weekly basis, not monthly or quarterly. So, and it's a lot. So I want to publicly thank you and your team, because it is your team that helped to accomplish some of the goals that you have established. So I think I thanked you 3 times. I thank you 4. But thank you, team, all of you, because you are what helped make this system work. With that, are there any, all follow-up items will be posted on board docs upon receipt. Now, I would like to take a motion to confirm actions taken in executive session, which were to discuss personnel matters regarding the appointment, employment, and removal of certain employees, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on legal matters, to discuss rules pertaining to board members, issues arising out of CEO's contract, and alteration of procedure for closed meetings. All those in favor? Is there any opposition? The motion carries, and the actions taken.
Yes, we need a first and second.
I move that we confirm the actions taken in executive session, that it was a continuation of the August
Yes.
18th meeting.
Second.
It has been moved and second to confirm the actions taken in executive session today. And I've read those items. All those, is there any opposition? Hearing none, the actions taken in executive session are confirmed. May I have a motion to adjourn? One other thing, board members, when you came in, there was a envelope marked confidential in your seats, and this is information that we will be using at the, for your information, and it'll be discussed at the special meeting. With that, may I have a motion to adjourn? Is there any opposition or discussion? Hearing none for either, this meeting is adjourned. Good night.